There is a specific texture to the memory of the 1970s, a graininess that feels like Super 8 film footage, characterized by a unique blend of freedom and neglect that produced a generation of adults who are psychologically distinct from any that came before or after, operating on a baseline of feral independence that is almost impossible to replicate in the modern safety-obsessed world. You have probably noticed them, or perhaps you are one of them, the people who possess a calm, almost cynical detachment in the face of chaos, who can fix a broken engine with a piece of wire, who view authority with deep suspicion, and who treat minor injuries with a shrug rather than a panic attack, because they were raised in an era where survival was largely a do-it-yourself project. To understand the psychology of the 1970s child, you must understand the environment of benign neglect in which they were incubated, a world where breakfast was a Pop-Tart eaten alone, where the instruction was simply, "Come home when the streetlights come on," and where the hours in between were a vast, unmonitored wilderness of dangerous playgrounds, metal slides that burned your skin, and social hierarchies that were navigated without the intervention of adults. This environment rewired their nervous systems to develop an incredibly high internal locus of control, meaning they believe that they alone are responsible for their outcomes, because quite literally, there was no one else watching to save them if they fell. There is a profound psychological imprint left by the Latchkey Kid phenomenon, a term that defined a generation of children who walked home from school to an empty house, wore a key around their neck like a talisman of adulthood, and spent the hours from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. entirely alone. This solitude, which would be considered child endangerment today, was considered normal then, and it forced the developing brain to master the art of self-soothing and problem-solving at an age when most children today are still being supervised during playdates. If you grew up in the 70s, you learned that boredom was not a crisis. It was a state of being that required you to use your imagination as a survival tool, forcing you to invent games, build forts, and construct entire universes out of sticks and dirt, effectively training your brain to be creative and resourceful in a way that the dopamine-saturated, screen-addicted brain of today struggles to comprehend. But this independence came with a cost known as emotional repression, because in a world where parents were often focused on their own self-actualization, fueled by the rising divorce rates and the cultural shifts of the me decade, children learned that their emotional needs were secondary and that complaining was futile, because there was often no one listening, or if they were listening, they would simply tell you to go outside and play. This created a generation of adults who are incredibly resilient, but often struggle with vulnerability, viewing the expression of need as a weakness and viewing reliance on others as a dangerous gamble, because their foundational memories are of figuring it out themselves. The 1970s was also an era of profound cultural cynicism, where the naive optimism of the 1950s and 60s crashed into the reality of the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and the oil crisis, teaching these children that the government lies, that institutions crumble, and that the adults in charge do not actually know what they are doing. This planted the seeds of a deep-seated skepticism that defines this generation, creating a psychological profile that questions everything, trusts nothing, and requires verification before buy-in, making them immune to the kind of blind hero worship that previous generations engaged in. You became the watchers, the observers of the collapse, realizing that the social contract was fragile and that the only thing you could truly count on was your own grit and your small circle of friends. Psychologically, this generation occupies a unique bridge position known as the analog-digital straddlers, because they are the last people to have an analog childhood of vinyl records, rotary phones, and encyclopedias, but they were the first to enter a digital adulthood, adapting to computers and the internet with ease. This gives them a cognitive flexibility that is rare, allowing them to value the slowness and patience of the old world, where you had to wait for your favorite song to come on the radio, while also navigating the speed of the new world, creating a balanced perspective that younger generations lack. They understand the value of deep work and delayed gratification because they grew up in a world where nothing was on demand, where you had to wait weeks for a package or photos to be developed, teaching them that anticipation is part of the pleasure and that frustration is not a reason to quit. However, the parenting style of the 70s, which can be described as free range, also exposed these children to real dangers that would be unthinkable today, from riding in the back of pickup trucks without seatbelts, to breathing in secondhand smoke in every restaurant and car, to playing with toys that were actual projectiles. This exposure to low-level danger desensitized their amygdala, the fear center of the brain, creating a high threshold for risk and a calmness in the face of physical discomfort that looks like stoicism to others. You are not easily rattled by physical pain or minor accidents because you survived a childhood that was filled with scrapes, bruises, and broken bones that were treated with mercurochrome and a Band-Aid rather than a trip to the emergency room, reinforcing the belief that the body heals and that life is inherently rough. But this roughness also created a shadow side, where many 70s kids struggle to validate their own trauma, because compared to the freedom and the coolness of the era, their emotional neglect feels invisible or invalid, leading them to minimize their own pain with phrases like, "It wasn't that bad," or "We turned out fine," even when they are carrying deep wounds of abandonment or insecurity. In relationships, people who grew up in the 70s often value loyalty above all else because their peer groups were their primary survival units, their wolf packs that roamed the neighborhoods on bicycles, protecting each other from bullies and navigating the social terrain. They treat friendship as a sacred blood oath because friends were the family you chose when your biological family was distracted or dissolving due to the skyrocketing divorce rates of the era, famously depicted in movies like Kramer vs. Kramer. This explosion of divorce shattered the illusion of the nuclear family for the first time, forcing millions of children to navigate the complexity of step-parents, joint custody, and broken homes, instilling a pragmatic and sometimes cynical view of marriage, where they hoped for the best but prepared for the inevitable end. This makes them incredible employees and leaders today because they're not fazed by corporate restructuring or economic downturns, having internalized the belief that stability is an illusion and that the only security is your own ability to pivot. They are the fixers of the modern world, the ones who come in when the system breaks because they know how to operate without a manual, having spent their childhoods MacGyvering solutions out of whatever was at hand. Yet there is a lingering sense of invisibility that haunts this generation, often squeezed between the massive boomer generation and the loud millennial generation, feeling like the middle child of history who did all the work but got none of the credit. This invisibility is comfortable for them because they're used to being overlooked, used to flying under the radar, and they often prefer to lead from the shadows rather than standing in the spotlight. They are the pragmatists who know that fame is fleeting and that competence is quiet, valuing results over recognition and authenticity over performance. The turning point for the 70s child often comes in midlife, when they realize that they are exhausted from being so strong, so independent, and so self-sufficient, and they begin to grieve the childhood they didn't have, the nurturing they missed, and the safety they were denied. This grief is a necessary part of their evolution, allowing them to soften their defenses, to ask for help for the first time, and to realize that they no longer have to be the latchkey kid waiting alone in the dark. They learn that they can be the adult who nurtures themselves, who provides the safety they craved, and who allows themselves to rest without guilt. Ultimately, the psychology of the person who grew up in the 70s is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a study in how neglect can produce strength and how freedom can produce responsibility. You are the last of the feral children, the ones who drank from the hose, who played until dark, and who survived without helmets or cell phones, not because you were lucky, but because you were tough. You carry a wisdom that is vanishing from the world, a knowledge that you can handle anything because you raised yourself, and that the world doesn't owe you anything, but you owe it to yourself to live fully. So wear your scars with pride, because they are the map of your survival. And remember that the quiet strength you carry is the foundation upon which the modern world was built, even if the world forgets to say thank you.